Thanks for joining us today. Those that are joining us by YouTube, we've already been entering folks on our Teams meeting. This would be our normally scheduled meeting. We had one 2 weeks ago um, to test some things out with Teams and the size and magnitude of trying to bring folks in and try and learn something. We're all the time trying to learn. That's how you do get better with anything. You take a well calculated risk and you try to put out there. And really, I think of all the stuff we've done over 25 years, it had a lot of this element to it, is the unknown to do it to this size and this scale. So and that's definitely the way you progress forward. So I participate. We had been on here, a half hour early with a good number of folks that joined early, just trying to have a discussion and just like last time, I'll stay on after this ends for anyone that wants to talk afterward. Um, and I've seen we're doing a pretty good job. Either you're muting yourselves as you're joining, which is a good skill set to learn, or our field staff doing that. And we have to have folks in as you have these Teams meetings and you do virtual meetings. You understand you have to have all these roles of the folks that are muting, trying to really make sure someone's who they really say they are. The muting aspect of it, and just trying to keep up with the content itself, and any kind of issues of someone that does join and short notice of trying to get them connected. So we are purposely testing something new out today. Besides bringing the districts in and having the ability to speak. Someone joined and needs to be muted. So if they can't do that, do that themselves. Okay, good. Someone found that out. So just as a skill set, I know you all know we're seeing the rush of people now just joining, is always have your mic muted to join it. I mean, it's a basic skill set. And then we've had to have tons of people yesterday just with the superintendent's one, just muting them, and try to join them early if you can, as we said. But at 10:10 today, we're trying something new. We're going to try to have a good part of our OET staff join at the same time, to see it at 10:10, to see what that does, to see if they get any kind of error message, and to see them trying to keep on getting on. How long it takes them to get on? Do they wait for 5 minutes? Do they wait for forever? And trying to get on. So like I say, we're doing both, giving out some good content today, and we'll be discussing that. But also an aspect of what we do is test something out, try some new things out, and actually try to break some things to see what the limit of is breaking them. And so our goal was to try to get to 250 today and over 250 to see what it does as it gets close to 250. So if we go completely off Teams, I guess then we'll be Andy will still be webcasting. We'll still try to do that if I'm still on. So if we don't totally break it, if we do, then I'll set up a time to try to call a timeout and have just certain folks join, so we don't know really where this is going or not going. Yesterday was a historic for us, a couple of different things, and we did try to have a Teams meeting. We got someone. We try to have a Teams meeting with all the superintendents at the same time, and bring in the governor's office as well. And we had a couple of unknowns with that. With all the invitees, so there was lots of superintendents that were invited, all of them. And then there was a lot of K group folks that were invited and others beyond there. And we knew that this 250 limit, so we were worried about the 250 limit and people sharing links, even though they're told not to share links, sharing them. And we definitely saw that where people that was shared with, they gave them to other people and they tried to get in and under the same name and credentials. So that was constant meeting crashers. Definitely when you're going to have the governor talk and you have superintendent, such a high profile audience on such an important topic, you're going to have all that element. So worried about the 250 limit, the move of moving the governor's office over, and that went well. Had a whole army of people signed up to be the muters, since when we had the discussion with the superintendents 2 times before with the phone, is there was 10 or 15% that we're not muting. And so that was really well addressed yesterday. The unknown of it was bringing all superintendents at the same time, and wish we'd had a chance just to try to bring them, just that group, and not such a hot topic, just in, so we could see if they're running into something technically, um, and would test it from their exact device. And I know you know this with folks, is just because they've worked and they've had teams work on one device doesn't mean it works on another one, and that's the kind of a blind spot that folks have. So and obviously the recording function, you can record it if you have an issue. And there was like, do we record or not record it? Because it was trying to be kind of a somewhat of a team huddle atmosphere to where you're just talking with the superintendents. But like I say, when you're having that topic, that audience, there was lots of moving parts to go. And we somewhat try to simulate that with this group here and just try to learn from it. And hopefully you all can learn from it as well. As Marty talked about, is we really like the Teams and YouTube combination, because Teams allows you to have, you can let a good number of people, if they want to, interact with you directly by voice and by video. And for those that may just want to listen, or they have any kind of struggle on the virtual setup, and it's tough to get the mic working, the headset. One of them called in, I could tell they're getting a mic mixed up with the speaker. Those are two separate types of things, and they never really had tested it out. You can just go to this other thing and the YouTube and just have them watch it. And if they have trouble with that, well, then they have issues with it. But overall, went well. But we're going to have our field staff get with the 35 districts and with you all that those districts that had an issue, to try to understand what could have happened. Is there some kind of setup on the device? Is there some kind of setup if it was in the district, within the district? Is it something on the Microsoft side of it? But we definitely want to understand it. So we're gonna, spend some time with, it's about 15%. We always imagine like 5% of the districts would not have someone listening, and it always happens. Something happens, and the person that was there, couldn't make it, whatever reason, they had no intention to join. But that leaves about 15%. So we're gonna, work on those, 15%, and contact you or the superintendent directly to try to figure out exactly when they try to join. Did they try to join at the last second? Because obviously, if you have people joining at the last second and don't do it ahead of time, you have the jam up, and the physical part of everybody trying to get through a single door. If they've waited till the last second to get in at a meeting that starts, and did they get a message? Did that happen? They get a message of it's really busy, and then they didn't try again. So that's why we've got this 10-10 thing that's going on. Marty, is there anything else you'd like to share before we go into some other content about the meeting yesterday, the virtual meeting yesterday, and trying to, the plus sides of it, and also trying to figure out other aspects of it?
No, that's a great recap, David, and I think that it's just extremely important to have those conversations up front about the design and what the intent is. Kind of Carrie Williams from Owen County jumped into the meeting before the meeting, which was awesome, and just kind of sharing some experiences and just talking through expectations of what the design is and what we're trying to do. And I think it's really important to have those conversations up front. That's proven very successful. And again, most of the cool thing about yesterday was the hurdles that were identified in the previous two meetings with the governor. We were 100% successful in those. We just had what we said, kind of recapping last night. We said that it wasn't as perfect because we had some identified folks that couldn't get in. And several, we do appreciate the feedback. Several EdTech leaders and CIOs have responded that they were 20 minutes, 30 minutes ahead of time, could not get in. And so we're chasing those down.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of the learning today. And I'd be interested in any of those that are trying to get in today and couldn't. That just lets us know, because Chuck, what is our count up to at this time? Because at any
We're a
time
little
now
over
we should be having.
160. Yeah,
Okay.
we're up about 170.
Okay. So hopefully we can try to get it. I'm anxious to get over the 200. So hopefully we have other parts of our staff, and if
They're joining.
okay, so we may have a little chaos here if folks don't mute, and hopefully they're doing that as they're coming on now. So just behind the scenes, we had much like we're doing today, is the KEs for the region are the admitters into the lobby. So they were doing the same thing yesterday with the superintendents. So they know the superintendents' names and familiar with that better than anyone else that we had in KDE. And totality is not everyone knows every superintendent's name, and so that worked out well to we had them coming in. So I appreciate those, and the muters. We were right on top of it. The part that you notice we take away the phone number is you can't tell who that is, and all these invites they say to a large group, especially when you got masses trying to come in, in a short period of time, is this unknown of a phone number could be very problematic, because they could be anybody that's going to just try to jump in and cause a chaos to your meeting. Is not even part of your meeting, should not even be part of it at all. So that's the reason we take those phone numbers away. And there's a technique through Teams that you can actually use your phone to make a few phone call, but identifies who you are versus just a plain phone number, and just trying to figure out who those are. Obviously, we're trying to figure out. Initially, the invite was sent out to X number of people with that phone number, and they were joining. We couldn't tell if we were going to get ready to boot somebody off from the governor's office or not. They had to join that way since the original invite was sent that way. So that was a little bit chaotic as well. So what is our count up to now, Marty, that you see?
Chuck, if you share that count, David, Chuck.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chuck.
Yeah.
We've rapidly approached 220.
Good.
We're at 220. All right.
Yeah.
220. All right. So it tells us that the 200 is not a limit. And I can't tell, any of the staff, I'm assuming that they would have, and you can, I guess, put on a Go Soapbox if anyone had an issue of joining and got some kind of you're waiting in the lobby type of thing, or you're waiting, there's too many people, we're trying to get to it.
David, and I think this is very helpful because every one of us from an EdTech leadership perspective are trying to help our leadership team solve these problems in this new space, this new environment. And we refer to them as design challenges, right? And so the two design challenges for yesterday's meeting were full participation. So the option for any superintendent to be able to ask questions directly to the governor was an upfront design challenge, as well as identifying exactly who is on the call. So this idea of not just anonymous, not permitting anonymous. And so those two design challenges led us directly to what we set up for yesterday, and just pushing in on whatever the big meeting is. And like you said, David, I think for traditional meetings with people that, are team members or whatever, having that dial-in number is awesome and it's helpful. But for large meetings that, need scoped out, there's some, design implementation there.
And I think you mentioned a good one, Marty, when we were starting in Owen County, is they and just like us, as they were experimenting with stuff, and we've not used the live event portion of Microsoft yet.
We have, David.
It's new. Huh?
We have used it for a couple of things.
Okay, so I guess that's new to me as well. So, but I guess the part that I learned, I should say, this morning is so far is with live events, is even though that the smartphones and the iPads work well with a regular meeting, because we've used them a lot for it. For a live event, if someone tries to be a presenter, there was an issue for the Owen County Board meeting yesterday. So that was new. not an issue unless you're trying to use the live events for us. And so for us, is at least for me, that was a brand new thing to try to make sure that if folks are joining it, obviously I think Microsoft needs to fix that. But in the interim, if they're joining, much like Owen County's made the adjustment, is they asked the participant or two that had those to use some other device to join and they're giving it another run ago, which I appreciate it. So that's pretty cool. So we'll move on here. Chuck, what's our current count of people?
237.
237. Okay. I'm just interested what it'd be at 250. See if we can try to get folks on it. So I'm assuming that all the folks that got on here is go ahead and put it in Go Soapbox link. And Marty, I know you're looking at that one. If you had any kind of signal that says wait in the lobby, I can't get in, too many people trying to get at the same time, we'll assume you didn't if you didn't put something in there. So let's start out with the Kentucky Board of Education meeting back on April 9th. Some awesome things came out with technology. I sent you some links. I really hope those aren't super long ones. The invite, the original one, and the reminder that I sent today is really good stuff in recognition of the good work that everyone's been doing within districts. Okay, the agency are obviously all of our CATS partners, vendor partners, and agency partners to make this so successful over the past month, and really over the past 25 years has allowed us to do that. So that was neat recognition, and what they're finding and talking with other states is they're not having this kind of success, and they're still quite a bit behind, just trying to get caught up. So that was neat. And in relation to that, the governor spoke with all the superintendents yesterday, at least 80% of them live. We're trying to figure out why the other ones, but obviously the school year we're not going to go back to in person, but we're continuing on to reach the 1062. And so this is, still going to keep light on how do we get, then the technology aspect of it, at least, is during this time with telework, telemeetings, and digital learning is definitely going to be a priority to finish out this school year. And I suspect it's going to be a priority for the next school year. To me, is until there's a vaccine and there's a very high number of folks that are vaccinated, and the testing numbers there in large numbers. A lot of folks are tested, and the treatment is much better and faster if you get it. And I know all that's being worked on very hard right now, but I don't know when that really gets normal, gets back to what we would recognize as being normal. So the next school year in particular, I think, is going to be, even though this last one is the most different one in my working career and all of yours, I think the next one is going to be even more, because as as the curve gets down lower, and people say, well, I want to try to go do these things, and something happens, and this, and we come back and say we need to calm that down a little bit until it gets stabilized, and try maybe give another run or go with waves 2 and 3 at this the virus that may happen in the fall and the winter time frame. So probably more of a dependence on virtual next school year for many more days than this past year to finish out this year. At least I anticipate that. I do hope everything moves much faster and we're not in this mode. But I do think permanently, just as we talked about in the board meeting, and Aaron Thompson, who leads the Council of Post-Secondary Education, I foresee virtual now being in for everybody's toolbox, that we're hoping a lot more people that have a meeting say, well, can't someone join virtually instead of having to drive all the way here? And trying to bring virtual people into their classroom, and just the virtual, teaching and learning that would occur for NTI, I suspect to be much better if NTI gets really back down to 10 days. But also the way to reach people that are homebound, broken arm, broken leg temporarily, or on a more full-time basis, of how you include them in on a classroom, I do think has forever changed. Look, what are our numbers at now? Just trying to curious. I see people popping in. Chuck, you are
David,
you're
we're at 242. We're climbing. Actually, 243. So yeah, no, we're good. Keep going.
so we're driving spaceship. We're not really sure.
David, I am very convinced that the more you talk, the more people join.
or I don't see them leaving in the big numbers as well. So I think that's the big things I got from the Kentucky Board of Education meeting and the governor's speech. We did have 10 of our 11 Kentucky Board of Education folks that were confirmed by the legislature. And so that allows the stability of that going forward, because it was unknown whether we would have to have 11 new ones on a pretty short notice. So appreciative of those, the confirmation of those positions. One of the big things we really do want to spend some time on today is the funding aspect of it. And I do want to talk about one of the items in the board meeting, but also beyond that, it's just the budget. And I know you're all interested in that. What I can tell from the legislative session that just finished is the KETS funds, the KIN funds, the Kentucky Education Network, Kentucky Education Technology System, and the IT Academy funds, while we asked for initially an increase of funding going into the session, we all know kind of what happened with that, and of us having to just be happy with, and we are thrilled with it remaining the same without a cut occurring. Within KD, the agency is and we're trying to see is the KD agency budget got cut itself. And as you know, a huge part of that budget is to service school districts. It's just not for KD agency stuff, and that's all that we do. So we will try to see what the impact of that is. So, like I say, we'll see, and to see if that hurts any of the services. Obviously, given the dependence on virtual almost everything, is our case is better than it ever has been to retain positions and retain services that we have going forward. So feel pretty confident with that, but that's the only unknown that we have. The other big aspect of it is other funding sources. There's a federal funding source that we talked about 2 weeks ago. We know a little bit more about it today. Marty's going to share the aspects of it. Marty and I are on a committee within KD agency and at the big table, talking about the amount of the funds that are allocated to the governor's office, the amount of funds that can go toward technology, the amount of funds at KD agency, and the amount of funds that we know going to school districts. And so, Marty, I'll let you share what you know so far. But before that, Chuck, what's our current count?
David, we're at 245. Okay.
245. All right. Go ahead, Marty. When Marty speaks, surely we're going to get over 250.
Or we could dip rapidly. So thank you, David. Before I start, just a quick shout out, Carrie Wilhoit. I was speaking too fast earlier, so thanks, Carrie Wilhoit from Owen County. So I took some hits, David, in the chat on that, and so appreciate that call out. So from a CARES Act funding source, and we have a Go Soapbox question out there. So if you've not jumped into Go Soapbox yet, please do that now. Question number 4, which when I get finished just sharing a couple quick points, we'll look at that Go Soapbox question. Right now, 54 folks have responded to that question, and I'd like to see that a little bit higher since we have a significant number of folks online today, which is awesome. So a couple quick points about information that we know of right now, and then I'll also share the 4 big deal topics that we are really pushing on from the CARES Act, the allowable expenses within the CARES Act funding. So number 1, and this is a capture of David and I participating in this agency-wide, but also a bit of a submission from me as well with a concept. So the 2 big buckets or pots of money that are directly targeted in the CARES Act funding. One is the governor's fund that is targeted at education. This is worked directly through the cabinet level, and that's the Education Workforce Development Cabinet along with KDE for school districts. And that bucket, that pot of money, total right now that we know of is right at $43 million. Very, I think, great leadership from the governor's office that wants to target and has already identified that $30 million of that pot of money will be targeted at remote learning and technology. And then an additional third area there is feeding and food services, the nutrition, continuation of food services and nutrition. So again, that $30 million target, that $30 million target in that pot of money in the governor's fund of the CARES Act is remote learning and technology, and then continuation of food services and nutrition. And so that's the first pot. The second pot of money that is identified in the CARES Act is right at $193 million, and that will be a formula-based pot of money, that is leveraging the Title I formula, and every district will have participation in that funding. I really relate that very similarly to the Title IV-A funding that we've been working through over the last several years. And so again, that's $193 million, and that will service every public school district in Kentucky on a formula basis. So that's the second pot. Now the third area, and this is just me adding in some, I think, some concept. The third area that I would throw out for everybody in terms of the CARES Act is there is waiver on many of the requirements of other title formula funding. And so, for example, the requirements or the bumper lanes, if you will, the bumper lanes that were put in place for Title IV-A funding that could be used for maximizing the effective uses of technology. Though there is a relief waiver for those constraints. And so essentially that broadens the area of which that money can be used for. And that's worth discussing. That's worth conversations at your leadership level. There is very broad guidance on what the overall impact or what the requirements are for the uses of this funding. And the word broad is being used a lot. We're not sure exactly. We're expecting even additional guidance from at the federal level from Ed on if any additional constraints or whatever. And so that's still forthcoming. But the word that the U.S. Department of Ed is using right now is broad guidance, which is important. So essentially be thinking of ways that you can have conversations on how remote learning and technology can continue to service your students, especially in times such as this. We do believe that this will be a possible GMAP application as well. However, there's it just in order for tracking and processing and things like that. But there will be at this point there will be no official district by district application. Trying to adhere to the suggestions of staying very broad, and the goal of all of this CARES Act funding is to get it in your hands, your district's hands, as fast as possible. So many things have been streamlined about it. And so we should see the money start to flow very quickly. So the four areas that we are working through and really pushing hard on is number one, a desire to increase our online and virtual schools networking. What that looks like, David, has referred to that in the past as, the version next of Kentucky Virtual High School. Definitely not the original concepts of Kentucky Virtual High School, but what that can mean to offer and expand what we're doing in terms of online and virtual schools across the state, service district by district and region by region. A proposal in this funding set to increase the use. So that's like adoption and metrics, the safety, security, and privacy for students when engaged digitally, digital learning. So safety, security, privacy, and then increased adoption and impact, where different initiatives can fit into that. Number 3 is student end devices. We're not where we need to be there across the state. We all know that. We have some really great approaches across the state, but we also have some gaps. And so targeting student end devices and home access in terms of the device and making sure that CARES Act funding can be used for that. And that would be more of district initiated services. And then finally, maximize, and we always bring it back to maximizing the effective use of technology for learning, professional learning. So digital learning coaches and where that can fit in and how we can be strategic with funding to really get our teacher leaders up to speed so that we can maximize that effective use of digital and remote learning. David, I'll turn it back over to you. But while I do that, I'm going to share my screen, and if that's okay, and I want to share the Go Soapbox poll, if that's possible.
I find it interesting. We are over 250 now, as I see the notes that I just got in. If that's right, is that right, Chuck?
251. Yep.
251. Interesting. So it's not right. I don't know if it has a factor of safety in there somewhere. Interesting. Okay.
So David, this is we kind of jumping around here on our Go Soapbox questions, but number 4 was just trying to get at that level of engagement that our EdTech leaders have been in at the district leadership level on that funding. So it looks like, right at 7 or so districts, 10% have been involved in a lot of strategic discussions. The majority feel like they've had some initial or not enough yet. And so 48 of our district leaders had a little fun option in there with who cares. So not sure who that one is, but and if this is the first time you're hearing of this funding source, really is the point about this topic today and really pushing on, start to have some of these conversations, get in and start to talk and ask questions to see what people are thinking about, to see what our leaders are thinking about. Okay, David, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, and so I'm going to give you some pressure points. Obviously, thinking about even PD this summer, how does that look for folks that want to do some catch up this summer, really truly summer school? Not that that's a Katie organized thing, but how do you get PD for folks that so they understand how to maximize? What was that look? Okay. How to maximize these tools, how to really do virtual teaching and learning how to do virtual meetings. And I know the balance is, okay, we don't want to get a position that we don't have forever, but I do think there's going to need to be some ramp up to help our digital learning coaches, to supplement them, and maybe even to help them get somewhat established in districts, because we've always think that that's been an important part going back 20 years is the most effective way to give professional development, but definitely during these times, we think the next school year is going to be much different than any we've had. As Marty, said, is we established Kentucky Virtual High School long ago, and this was really a different view of it. It's not really a KD created one. It's more of a brokering of services that we're providing for school districts, building upon what Babel has done to expand it across the state. We have 21 districts that offer courses beyond for districts beyond just themselves, and how can we team with them and the cooperatives and higher education to provide that. Another decision that we made to move forward with across the state in regards to Lightspeed is to help out with safety and security. is to acquire the relay product for across the state. We have approximately 25 districts that are doing that for safety and security reasons for their district, to prevent malware for the end devices, and to move forward with that. And they'll definitely going to be part of this package to acquire that initially and ongoing. To be honest with you, there'll be great interest for end devices. You all have faced that already. Is having end devices for students at home, and I don't know how that works for, my daughter is a kindergarten teacher. How that works for kindergarten, first and second graders, sending devices there, but at least if nothing else, then you have a device there to where someone can join virtually. And like I said, most of you know that I've mentioned my daughter's already been teaching virtually for a long time. She has a class, but also she's been teaching a virtual class, and so she's very adept and used to doing this. And so obviously she would like to reach the other percentage of her students. We take a look at it, and you're all getting a good feel for the technology readiness data, the digital readiness data that we collect every year. And I mentioned this last time. I have just, virtually for a long time. She has a class, but also she's been teaching a virtual class. Oh, I don't know what that was. Okay. Does anyone know what that was right there?
Yeah, it was just a participant that had needed to mute.
Okay. Yeah, always mute. You gotta get the mute skills. You gotta have the mute skills. And it's definitely you got an echoing and listening to it. But the desire is to have them all there, and you could teach them. So the reason I mention that in this context, and you all have faced this, is with digital readiness tool, needing to have that as accurate as possible. And the home access, and me being shocked that virtually no other state, and I want to really say virtually no other state, has really been collecting and serious about home connectivity. And we have been way before even NTI interested in that piece of it. And so our numbers are going to be somewhat more accurate than others just trying to collect it right now. And for the districts that may have not really kept up with it that much, now everybody's NTI is really trying to understand who really does not have this. The ones that are on the low poverty level, it's an affordability issue. The ones that could afford it, and we understand poverty is really a sliding scale right now, but don't know where to go to get it. And obviously you can play a broker role of pointing folks that do have the financial sources of where to go get that service. But it's those that don't have it. And it's during this time with such an emphasis on the virtual piece, and then the difficulties of doing it with just on the paper side for longer periods of time, is trying to provide that for everyone. So there's definitely going to be more pressure than ever, and then over this next year, these next months, for districts to start saying, do I start becoming the ISP for homes? And my definition of ISP for the homes is you are purchasing that service on behalf, using some kind of district managed funds for the districts, for the homes. In some aspects, you may be providing support for it. Even the support is just identifying who gets it, who doesn't get it, the initial setup, the additional way that you try to make sure that students are coming, with the relay system, and definitely up in the cloud as we're moving toward. Managing that and keeping up with that, as long with, if you give out a device, really make sure the whole household is not using it, but only that one person. So there's some people aspect that's been involved with that, which I've always been concerned about. But also, anytime you go down that path, especially when it's short one-time funds, it becomes the expectation that it's always going to be there. And that's the danger you do with anything, really, but especially anything that affects the homes, is this expectation, well, now you provided it when this child was a third grader, seems like you should provide it the whole way through. When those short-term funds lay out, we know the CARES money is very short-term, but also we probably understand the next year is going to be very different than any other time. And if expectations can really manage, this is a one-year thing, and probably the next year will be back down to a max of 10 days of NTI. So I say in the context, there's going to be a lot of pressure by folks for districts to get into the business of being the ISP for the homes. That's not going to be a thou shalt, definitely not from us, but definitely we've seen that pressure of it. So, Marty mentioned the funding sources that are there. They say as part of that, those funding sources go toward this ISP for the home. And how do you really keep up with that? Who's really there and who's really saying, well, they did have a funding source, or they do have one to say, well, I'll take the free stuff for sure. And keeping up with that and keeping that somewhat manageable. And we've talked about that with the staff of really identifying those and true needs. So it's going to be something that it's tough to explain to folks now. Is this really the best long-term approach? If you do this once, people have the expectation that you keep on doing that. And the difficult part we've had but for most folks, the state budget really, since 2003 has been going downward. And definitely when we hit that issue in 2008 with the mortgage crisis, it went downward. I mean, on a pretty constant downward path without really new revenue sources being identified. So when you're trying to identify a brand new service and then funding that one, and that's a pretty expensive one to get in the business of funding. Hotspot services, and besides the device, the ongoing monthly cost of that, I don't know if it's $50, $40 a month, whatever though that is, and sustaining that's going to be tough to do. So trying to get folks balanced with that is very difficult. At the national level, there is a couple of national organizations that have been working on the FCC and others to allow E-rate funds to be used for that purpose. Obviously, one of our concerns with that, there's a limited amount of money with E-rate funds. And a good number of you districts remember the days not everybody got category 2. And it was only until they removed the voice services of being an eligible service that everyone who never gotten Cat 2 services for items like, wireless devices in the at the school and needed them now could get actually discounts for it. So the part that we always are concerned with people going down that path, yet part of the money can be taken, or a huge chunk of it, to provide internet to the homes for students, for the parents, for the adults, obviously the students can get a benefit from. But does it take away from this pot of money that is not growing? To make sure that's on the radar screen and there's no implication that's associated with that. And that's always tough to do when you're going down this path. And I can just tell you, just like anything, is when you folks will sometimes take, at least for me, is that I'm against something when I just ask questions about, have you thought about the 4 or 5 things? And I almost got to start out with, it's a wonderful idea. I'm not criticizing the idea. We all want students to have internet access at the home. But when they just present just the positive sides of it, which definitely there are positive sides, and don't in that discussion talk about the 4 or 5 big things that they need to be considered in the short and long term, it's very misleading. And for example, for me, folks, I was against esports, not necessarily tremendous upside to esports. What I was for is the entire picture being presented of also the possible downside. So if those happen, and what happened is folks that I didn't know that they were fully aware of it. And the same thing with this one is the folks really pushing that with organizations at the national level are really only pushing the plus sides and leaving the things that folks need to consider in the long term and unknown. And for fear, and it's natural when you're pushing so hard for something, is to not share the downsides of it for fear that it will hurt you getting it through at all. So I'm not sure where that's going to go. And when it's going to go, they're trying to push hard for it to be part of the 4th stimulus bill. Whenever that comes out, whatever decision will be made by that. So when we find out, I don't know if the odds of that are 5% or 10% or 20%, but I do know this is to the average person. There's tremendous pressure to say for X number of students that don't have it at their home, is the school needs to get into the business of providing it. I mean, that's not me saying it, you're seeing that. So there's going to be a real balance here, especially just not to close out this school year, but next school year of that. So I want to pause there, Marty. I've been looking at Ghost Soapbox. Are there any Ghost Soapbox questions related to everything we've discussed? And Chuck, before that, can you give me the count of folks that have been trying to get in?
Absolutely, David. We've been up above 250 a couple of times, around 252, 253. Just so you'll know, I have been on a back channel with Tim Cornett from Microsoft, and according to Tim, they are going to be upping the capacity of teams to 350 from 250, and he's going to be looking into whether that's been applied to our tenant since we're now above the 250 mark. But we're holding pretty steady. Now, I will tell you, David, just a little bit of humor, just to show how awesome our EdTech community is. We have a couple of folks that have joined with multiple devices, and there's rumor flying around that someone may have even had their cat join just to help us get to the 250 mark. And there are absolutely a couple of really interesting topics trending right now on Go Soapbox that we probably need to pause and talk about.
I'm pretty sure that cat even has a Facebook page, so it's cat's kind of legit. So I would not discount that.
Well said. Yeah. So some great questions coming in, David, in Go Soapbox, and also just a side report that it looks like we've had our first report of someone getting the same. Actually, a leader from Jefferson County getting the same error message that we saw yesterday, and so we're capturing that in the background.
Okay.
So some of the questions coming in. And David, some of these are, I think we're planning to discuss or briefly hit on in a bit as well, but I'll go ahead and launch them out there.
One of my questions was for that person, did they get it and did they keep on trying, or did they just stop them? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right,
and I wonder if it's because we're above the 250 or some to 253 and they may have had a plus or minus of that's part of it. But I'm assuming that wasn't before we hit 250 and early on in the process.
Yeah, it's actually just in the last couple minutes.
Okay.
So it would be something that would be what we would expect, right? So that would make as opposed to maybe what we saw yesterday. So a couple questions I think to hit on. Number one, will the June passphrase date be extended? And so that's a topic that I think we're planning to speak a little bit more on here in a bit, David. Right.
Yeah, we've always said we're very much openness to that. We know the situation. We're in the same one in the agency of trying to extend it. Our intention is to do that before that time frame, mainly because we have so many cyber criminals targeting the agency right now. I mean, it's 5-10 times than what normally is, and I suspect some of your positions in your districts are getting it higher than it's ever happened before. So it's moving us definitely with certain definitely certain positions, and you may have others that have a lower priority, but we definitely see that as being, pushed back, and it's not a thou shalt, but it's just words of advice to you. You try to get, just like we're trying to do, is try to get those so it's not so easy for the cyber criminals to get in because they are coming at them full court press right now.
So it's that balance and trying to make the right decision, right?
So for example, on Wednesday, we've announced this. We're going to, send something out to Katie staff about banners. If you get, say something, this is from someone that's coming from outside of Kentucky school districts, the agency, and certain state agencies. So just be cautious in opening it, safe links and safe attachments, and then moving forward with, how we do the pass phrases with them. But yeah, definitely been extended. So thanks, Marty. And what else do we have?
So there are several questions and comments that are geared towards the other poll questions that we have about collecting devices and things like that. I'm going to hold on those for just a bit. On funding topics, there were a couple. One was summarizing the 4 areas, David, that we're pushing on, and we'll include those in the recap show notes that we'll send out, just so folks have them and can read them. A question on the timeline being spended. Randy Bailey asking, great question. Timeline for spending the additional money. What does that look like? And that's part of the additional guidance that we are expecting to receive soon from the U.S. Department of Ed. But I can tell you that most of what we've heard so far, and again, this is getting information while it's coming, but most of what we've heard so far is that timelines will be extended. Just recognizing that we're in unprecedented times and keeping to the traditional, whether it's 18-month, timeline of federal programs, but having those timelines extended will be communicated pretty widely as soon as we get that from U.S. Department of Ed. And then some other points about that I think are really strong about what can be purchased with the CARES Act funding. And again, what we're going to continue to push on is it's broad guidance. And so, can you purchase licensing for a learning management system? And absolutely, the answer to that would be right now a yes. And again, broad guidance there. We are going to. I think it's one of these things that we're going to keep pushing on these 4 big areas that help move these big conversations all in one way. But in terms of funding initiatives to help your students in a remote learning perspective, I would definitely put. In fact, we're to the point of saying that if you don't have a learning management system approach, a standardized or a streamlined approach for district-wide or at least school-wide, then that's really detrimental to the remote learning experience. And so definitely would put that in there.
David, there's one more topic you just may want to touch on just real quick. Also, Marty, sorry to interrupt, and it's our number 3 trending topic right now. Obviously, you've got some folks that heard you talk about how we're going to leverage the funding specifically for the Lightspeed Relay product. And basically, all I would add to that is, what we're looking to do is enter into an agreement with Lightspeed that would cover the relay licensing on behalf of all districts across the state. So anything you want to add to that, David?
No, I mean, that's what the intention is to do. Is we have, I think, 25 districts, and it's 100,000 students, as I can recall, because we have, I think Jefferson's already doing it. So it's for the other, 500,000 plus students, and then all the adults. So, yeah.
So, and Diane, I hope that answers your question as well.
Yep. Thanks. Jeff, real quick, a minute or two on we're still moving forward the STLP State Championship. Anything new since we spoke about it last?
Yeah, actually, thanks, David. I'm going to share my screen just for a quick second to give everyone access to this link if you haven't seen it. It's out of the way. But we have put together all the resources for our STLP at home, which is how we're kind of framing our all digital healthy at home STLP State Championship for 2020. And if you were to jump at this link, STLP at home 2020, it'll jump you right over to our new informational page that we're using to get folks connected with the new and updated sort of scoring guides and processes, and let you know which of the products and which challenges we're going to be having. So I would just give a chance to ask everyone to take a minute if you share that with folks or take a peek at that. We're asking all of our projects that are coming back online, and we've completely updated how folks can do these projects in a sort of a virtual way. And so we are asking folks to re-register their projects. You can jump to that on there. You can see the new updated rubric, all the fun, good stuff that's happening there. My last little point that I would just sort of want to make sure I make with everyone is that we absolutely recognize the challenges that are going on right now for our STLP coaches to take on this additional responsibility of, we're looking at how to do NTI well. We're looking at how to connect with students that are in different situations and the challenges with their homes. And so we recognize that there are some unique challenges in place with this. And we appreciate everyone doing their best. We're recognizing that. We're going to make this be as great as it can be. But also, it's one of those things where we also know that this is not something that everyone's going to be able to pull off. And that's okay. And we're okay with that. And we want folks to know that this is not going to jeopardize their STLP status or anything if they actually find that they can overcome some of these challenges. But we're here to help them make it happen. And we're here to help make it be as streamlined and as easy as possible. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
David, a question came in for Jeff. When will category leads get their roster info? And it came in through Go Soapbox.
Yeah, so we've carved out that, and I'm sending that out as soon as they are each finalized. And so if they don't have that by this afternoon or even this morning, then they should reach out to me directly and we'll make sure they get what they need.
Thanks. I'd like to bring up the one question about Active Directory. Was that discussion? Was that a poll question?
I think you've got a little bit of both going on, David. Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what came up, because we want to talk about that some right now, about Active Directory and this. And I know, Phil, you're prepared to talk about this some, because keep in mind we got a couple other things we got to hit on. But one of the things that came to my attention recently, I just get it from K, the agency, because I provide both services for K's agency staff and then for school districts, and only one other office does for both, is this concept of folks that are not touching the Active Directory network within a certain period of time needing to get on with a certain period of time, or it makes it very difficult for them when they come back to try to get access to local resources on their network. As long as they stay off of it, everything works fine. But whenever they come back, if they've not at least touched the network with their device within a period of time, I think it's like 60 days, there could be a problem, and they bring it back on the 61st day with accessing certain things. So I have 3 teachers in my family, 3 Kentucky K-12 teachers, and actually a 4th one in Indiana, so 4 teachers in the family. And so they're all, part of the system of telecommuting. So I asked one of them, I asked all of them, how many are bringing your device, specifically your Windows device, because this really affects just the Windows devices that they would have, that they would take it home. How many are bringing those back to your school building, or have since you've been in this environment of, where we're doing schools virtually, and not coming on the site as much? How many of you actually brought your device to your school building, and it's a Windows device, and actually turned it on the network? Now, the family members, only one of the 4 had done that. One of them had, since this has been announced, their school district, they've not come back to their classroom, and they say no one else in their school, none of the teachers have, and they're not aware of any of the other teachers the other school have. One of the other ones that teaches at the high school level came in, but did not bring in the laptop, and was doing some things in there, but didn't feel like they needed to do it, and didn't even think about even connecting. The other one of them had, she had come in to her kindergarten classroom and gotten in, but she just happened to be, doing some things there. And the other one had not as well been back to the facility. So it ran into this as we've been, for a certain number of districts, getting the 30 days and 90 days is talking about this issue. We even haven't K the agency since we've been telecommuting, for 3-4 weeks, is what do we do that is simplistic, and not maximize, not overwhelming the virtual private network licenses we have. They're concurrent, but we don't have that many of them. And then try and look for simpler ways of people, just like with the students coming by and just connecting, either within the building or right outside the building, to resync it, at least within that 60-day time frame, versus them trying to understand the whole thing about VPN and getting off of it, not getting on it every time because their job doesn't require it with the limited amount of licenses that we have. So Phil and Chuck and anyone else, I'll let you add to this a little bit. We can't go on the in-depth conversation we have, but mainly it was to give you all a heads up, and I know our field staff will be discussing this with you, is what do we do with this? And we're trying to see, can the shot clock even be extended beyond 60 days? So we're looking at that option. And Brian, I know you were part of this as well. So I'll let you all hit this. So let's spend like 5-7 minutes so we can cover a couple other topics as well. But I'll ask for the folks for the discussion questions. I'm not looking at them. What has come up that we need to discuss that you've seen on them?
David?
Yes.
Phil. There's been some great conversation on Go Soapbox. Absolute wonderful conversation. And so districts have been thinking about this, and I know it's a little bit different this year than most years. It's not as easy to collect those computers, whether they're Windows workstations or Chromebooks or whatever they are. So but districts look like they have a plan to either collect, refresh, deal with the passwords being out of sync, or deal with the rejoining of the Windows workstations to the domain once they come back. So it's great to see that districts have been thinking about this already, and probably they've got some experience in this that we have never had to experience, because in the summers we don't, our people don't go home. We don't collect workstations like schools do. So so it's great to see that they're willing to share those conversations, and I think we've got a lot to absorb just by looking at the Go Soapbox questions and the discussions that have been happening so far.
Brian and Chuck, anything you want to add to the conversation?
No, David. I mean, Phil summarized that well. You've got a few folks that are aware of what they need to do, their position for that. You've got others that see this as obviously going to be a big challenge for them. So it's good feedback. We'll just work through.
Yeah, and the balance we have with all the devices is we have 250,000 Windows devices, I think, or is it how many of those are in this situation? And we only have 2,500 VPN licenses. And so that's the balance of we can't have everyone trying to use VPN, especially at the same time. And given that 99% of folks really don't understand VPN, it's a confusing concept in itself. For the technical folks, it's a right-hand layup, so simple. People beyond that, it's mysterious. And it's also, do I got to log it every time? And obviously, if we have people logging in and staying in every time that really don't need to have it for their job on a daily basis, it becomes a problem with this limitation of 2,500. So, we're looking for, even in KD agency, can they come by? They don't have to come in the building. Some very few policy percentages do. Can we set it up much like you all have your schools? Is extend the wireless with existing devices that we have in the building, place them closer to the windows, and let people do the quick sync they have to do there, and then without having to understand VPN and doing it that way. So it's definitely on our radar screen, but we definitely want to make you aware of it, because it is a pretty big deal. As Brian would say, it doesn't turn it into a brick, but it definitely makes things that they normally access within a building when they come back inaccessible. A file server that you would have within a building, printing, I think, within the building. So there's some basic stuff they would have difficulty with if it goes and doesn't sync up and do this Active Directory thing within a short period of time. Let's bring up some of the Go Soapbox, if you could, Marty. Let me see the rest of the the poll questions that we asked, and just see the responses of it, if you can do that.
Yeah, so here's question number 1. How does your district plan to handle the collection of laptop and other district-owned devices this summer? And looks like, strong majority plan to collect all of them via, a communicated and coordinated drop-off system, which makes a ton of sense. And then another strong majority are still thinking through that, still working through, what methods or what options they might have. And then even right now, we have significant folks still coming in and answering.
Okay. Let's go to our next one. That's interesting.
Yeah, right on. So question number 2, if you're not collecting laptops from your remote staff, then will you attempt to refresh them over the wire online? And looks like most folks majority are saying no, but there's still a strong, of the 43 responses, it's still a strong saying yes. And so those designs will continue to be important to work through. And then the third question is, has your district begun to review? Oh, sorry, that's not the third question. Jumped ahead. It was a discussion question that we were after, which is, again, Phil referenced. There's a great discussion going on. And so just to identify that, do you anticipate issues with 60-day limit on Active Directory and the trust of Windows-based devices? And we already have at least, close to 10 responses that folks, if you haven't jumped in there, I would prompt you to go back to Go Soapbox and jump in and read some of these responses, especially if you're still thinking about what your plan is going to be. Back to you, David.
Well, I think we have some other ones to show, right? Did we show school report card? I'm sorry if I missed it. Did we show all of them?
No, apologize for that. I thought we would come back to that, but here's the school report card question. Has your district begun review of this SRC finance tab? And majority of folks are not sure yet, but of the 71 responses, 23% have. And so obviously over the next days and weeks, we would see this grow.
And one thing I want
worth a quick. Go ahead.
I just want to mention that they have decided this week to extend the deadline on that for districts, so they're going to the middle of May. So that just, I don't know that that's been widely distributed yet, but that decision has been made, and that information will be going out.
Thank you, Dee Dee. And then the final discussion question that we had, kind of preloaded was questions, concerns, or comments about additional assistance needed to the COVID-19 impact. And Rusty Adams and Diana McGee both kind of agree that one thing is that maybe normal school hours need to change. Students and parents both are more active later in the day when given a choice, apparently. And if I were replying back to that, I would say, and sometimes it's not a choice when parents are working at the same time that kids, our students should be. And so sometimes we just have to set a new schedule. And so sometimes the late afternoon learning is just what has to happen at home while both parents are working, maybe. Okay, back to you.
Yeah. Thanks. Anything else as you're looking at Go Soapboxes, scroll to the top? I don't have it in front of me. I got 10 other things going on here. So is there something that we can, is good to address? And this is, any of our field staff can jump in as well.
David, one of the connecting questions that Phil referenced, but to call out that significant bump ups, significant votes as a good question is, how are folks handling the disinfecting devices that are collected and returned? And so just a strong recognition that a lot of folks are trying to think through that.
Yep.
And on that one, specifically, 7 additional folks responded back with what they're intending to try or intending to do or what they're thinking about. Yeah.
Well, I do want to thank everyone for joining today. We'll be I'll be hanging around afterward. You don't have to stay on here. It was successful in a lot of different ways. We got out a lot of good information. We were able to test out this going to a very high scale. We were able to test people, even though you ask them to show up early, them massing in a short period of time. And so that all worked well. So we're still going to try to circle back with especially it'll be interesting, the ones that the superintendents that showed up couldn't get on, but their CIO EdTech leader could today, is what would explain that. So we're gonna try to investigate it, but this answered a lot of questions for us. So I appreciate the participation. Anyone else on the OET leadership team or the field staff have anything to add on?
Do not, David. Just want to wish everybody to stay safe and take care of themselves.
Yep. Thanks. And I'll be hanging around here just for a little while longer and encourage some other folks to hang out. So we've had the meeting before the meeting, and most of the things I go to, it's not the meeting itself, although it's great. It's me. I usually try to show up early and I stay around a little bit later. So I get a lot out of that as well. So thanks for joining us today. Yes.
One final comment. I tried to jump in before we started signing off, but just a recognition, as we have a lot of our school district leaders on today, that our teachers are obviously working incredibly hard right now to learn new things, to also create learning experiences for kids that are the right learning experiences, and just a challenging time. I know we all know this, but it's worth citing and worth sharing that. Recognizing our teachers and leaders for how hard they're working.
Yes. I agree. Chuck, what was our high number? I've downloaded the attendance a variety of times throughout this. What was the high number that we got?
I think we hit 254 one time, David. Okay. And then Marty started talking again, and the numbers started dramatically reducing. I couldn't figure out why.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for being part of the staff and part of this webcast and this Teams meeting. And we'll be hanging around a bit. Take care.